Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April meeting of the City of Revere Board of Health. My name is Michael Wells, Director of Municipal Inspections. In attendance for tonight's meeting are board members Dr. Nathalie Kong, Chairperson, and representing the City of Revere is Lauren Buck, Director of Public Health, and Marcia Mendez, Administrative Assistant of Municipal Inspections. We have two agenda items tonight. The first one is beekeeping, and the second one is in regards to heating variances with the Board of Health. Board member Neza Lawadi has also just joined us as well. And I'm going to turn it over to Lauren for Director of Public Health for beekeeping.
Thanks, Mike. So I wanted to bring kind of the regulations and ordinance about beekeeping forward to the Board of Health to kind of start the conversation about, you know, what we need to do to make these regulations kind of able to be enforced by the city, and kind of where we are with this. So these regulations, the regulation and ordinance was written before I came on. And it's part of kind of the urban farming kind of initiatives that have been kind of put forward by some members of the community who have interest in kind of urban farming, and one of the components of that is beekeeping, and obviously the honey that bees make. So what I thought I'd do tonight is just kind of do a very brief overview of the regulation as written right now, and kind of the next steps that we need to take as a Board of Health around, you know, getting more educated and, you know, figuring out if the regulations need to be amended, and where we go from there. So I thought, first of all, I'd just talk about kind of the, just again, a brief overview of what the regulations and ordinances as they stand, as they're written now. These are drafts. And so we need to, you know, figure out if we need to make any changes, how that works. And then we would have to send it off to the City Council for review. So, the ordinance the ordinance that I'm talking about for tonight is for beekeeping on residential properties only. So, you know, this is for people who want to keep bees on their property, or the property if they're renting, or the property of the owners of the lot. It's talking about honeybees specifically, and it's so there's some regulations and rules and standards that are written into the regulation as it stands right now. There's some important permitting expectations, and one of the things that we would need to draft is a permit application form, and so that's one of the things that we would need to work on, and where that would be located in the city, on the city website, or, you know, where residents would be able to access that. So there's also standards written into the regulations as they are right now. So the standard would be that no more than 2 hives would be allowed on one lot, that hives would need to be marked with name and contact information. And then there's also some more specifics about kind of size and distance off the ground. There's some regulations written about flyways, which is kind of like where a flyway is, like where the bees kind of exit the hive. And so that's kind of, so those guidance are written in as well. And then obviously the permitting is what the Board of Health would be kind kind of responsible for. So we would expect a permit application to be submitted to anyone who wants to have a beehive on their property, with certain requirements in the permit, including drawings, including a description of the construction, written consent from the property owner, and a written statement from the beekeeper himself, which has some guidelines in the regulation as well. There's also a section that allows for variances. So if there were any residents who felt like the requirements of the ordinance constitute a substantial hardship, they would be able to apply for a variance. There's also a fee associated with the permit. It would be a yearly permit, so it would have to be renewed every year. And a variance would also, there's a fee for the variance as well. There would be a hearing as the Board of Health to consider issuance, suspension, revoking of permits or variances. Again, it would be a yearly renewal of the permit. And there's also written into the regulation a section about notifying abutters that someone who abuts their property is applying to have a permit for beekeeping. There's also a section about enforcement and violations and inspection. So it would be subject to inspection by the Board of Health, the hives, the apiaries, and a section about penalties if any beekeeper violates anything that's written into the regulations. So I did forward the regulations and ordinances to the Board of Health and to the the head of the inspectional services, Mike. And I think where we need to go from here is we all need to review the regulation, the ordinance. We also need to work on, like I mentioned before, a permit application form, a variance request form. And then I also think Massachusetts has a apiary program who has a contact where we would need to get in touch with them to do a little bit more education on our end to make sure that our inspectors felt comfortable inspecting. And so that's kind of something that we also need to look into. Some questions that were raised, I sat in on an urban farming committee meeting last week, and there were some questions raised by residents about kind of the process. One of the questions was specifically related to when the permitting process would be open. So if someone was interested in getting bees, they would have to get them in early spring. And so we would have to think about when our permit would be available, if it would be only available maybe fall or early winter or something like that, to allow for the process to take place in order to someone to actually get the bees in the springtime. And then there was also a question brought forward about the section 10, which specifically relates to notifying abutters. And one resident brought forward kind of the issue that it might be a significant hindrance for people to apply for bees, knowing that the abutters would be notified and would be notified of when and what the date and time of the public hearing, and all that stuff. So that's kind of where we are on this regulation and ordinance. But I do think we should move forward with the steps that I outlined. To move the policy forward. I don't know if anyone has any questions. That's kind of where we are with that.
No questions, Lauren. I love this idea. I think it's great. But I'm just looking also on like the mass.gov website about this, and the permit you're mentioning is going to be different from the apiary and colony registration form that they have to do both. They have to submit a permit to the city and then also register with the state.
Great question. Yes. So yes, the state, and that is actually written into our regulations. There is a state, there is a registration process through the state, Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources. That's where you register, exactly like you said on Revere, on mass.gov, Dr. Kong. And so that would be in addition to our permit.
Okay, great. I think that's the only question that I have. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm on board. Mike, are you able to like provide the inspectional support for this?
I think with some training, I think the inspectors would be able to take it on with some proper training.
Okay. Who would we go to write up like the permit and kind of look over and make sure the ordinances?
Yeah, great question. I think this is where that, and I actually have a contact name for the Massachusetts APR program. So I am planning on reaching out to a woman. Her name is Kim Skimmer, maybe. And so we're gonna have to rely on her expertise in terms of writing the permit and all that kind of stuff. There are other cities who have this ordinance in place, and actually our regulations and ordinances were based on Cambridge. But Somerville also has ordinances and regulations similar to this as well. And so we would also be looking to kind of base our permit on the current one that they use as well.
Yeah, I was literally just thinking that like they're, so that we're not having to completely reinvent the wheel. It might be nice to see like a sample of someone else's, but yeah, that's exciting. So then this would get ready for like a permit opening period of this coming fall.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. So plenty of time.
Yeah. And that's
Okay,
about it.
thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Dr. Kong. Second item on the agenda tonight is in regards to heating variances. The city of Revere provides a heating variance to some condominium and apartment buildings, which allows them to turn their air conditioning system on prior to the approved dates of the state sanitary code. Under the state sanitary code, condos and apartment buildings can turn off their heating systems from June 15th to September 15th. Heat must be provided prior and after those dates. So in Revere, we have some buildings that were built in the late 80s, early 90s that have one main heating and AC system for the entire building. Residents can control the temperature in their units, but they're not able to switch from heat to AC and vice versa. The Association of Property Managers submits a waiver to inspectional services to be able to switch over from AC earlier and keep it on a little bit later, past the state sanitary code. So the process of switching from heat to AC takes a couple of days in their buildings to make that system change. So the previous board in 2017 adopted a regulation that a variance can be granted 2 weeks before June 15th and 2 weeks after September 15th. So the variance is from May 31st to October 1st. And the property must have a 51% in favor vote of their residents for the variance to be granted. So I was bringing the current board up to speed, and we're actually in the season as we speak for heating variances. So each year, sometimes it can be a little, we tread water a little bit sometimes with heating variances, and we base it off of the majority vote of the building. With 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after, from May 31st to October 1st. So it looks like we have some residents joining us tonight from the St. George, which is a condominium building located at 350 Revere Beach Boulevard. They are one of those buildings that was built in the late 80s, early 90s, with that one heating system that I referred to a little bit ago. Occasionally, during unseasonably warm springs, that building can get very warm in there during the May and October period. So, we've seen temperatures in that building into the 80s, high 80s during May and October. So I'm not sure if any of the residents would like to speak. If you do, please unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record.
Hi. This is Rosalie Vincent, 350 Revere Beach Boulevard, Revere, Massachusetts. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to hear our concerns about the city of Revere's air conditioning ordinances regarding the condominiums. And we are asking this honorable board to consider changing those dates from June 1st to May 15th through October 15th. You're not familiar with this building. It can reach dangerously hot temperatures. I have my temperature reading right here. I have no heat on. It was 58 degrees all day, and the temperature in my condominium right now is 73 degrees. So you can imagine when it's 73 degrees outside, the building inside here is pretty unbearable. The St. George really needs to be able to have that option that once a variance is granted, that they can turn an air conditioning on when units reach high temperatures, especially in May and October. The current restrictions placed under the Revere Board of Health's ordinance makes it impossible to provide air conditioning in May and October, regardless of the temperatures even being in the 90s, regardless of an outpouring of requests from the majority of unit owners. And to really understand the severity of the situation and how dangerously hot these units can get, especially dangerous for those with asthma, COPD, heart conditions. In May and October, for those few that want heat, they are allowed to use heaters, and that's how it used to be handled in the past. It wasn't, we always were able to have air conditioning during hot periods in May and October. This ordinance totally ties management's hands because of the few that want the air conditioning off. And just to give you an example, management sent out letters asking people who wanted to sign yes if you want air conditioning on early, no if you don't. The tally was 122 yes, 3 no. So it shows you this is not just a few people wanting it, it's a few people that don't want it. I've witnessed in May and in October people having to leave their units, having to go to hotels. I've witnessed people not able to breathe in May and October when the temperatures reach, unsafe conditions. I just think it's common sense to allow a management company, if the weather is in the 90s or 80s or whatever it is, and the units are dangerously hot, to be able to turn on the air conditioning. The state law does, as Michael so eloquently stated, the state law does state from September 15th to June 15th, a landlord must provide heat. These are actually condominiums, number one, but number two, the insides of these units are warm. As I said, it's 73 degrees. I have not had my heat on all winter. I open the sliders all winter, and I'm sure other people will be able to attest to that. So I'm just hoping that we use some kind of common sense and protect the people who have to live in these buildings that are so hot. And the Board of Health is actually, with that ordinance forbidding air conditioning to be turned on before June 1st, is, I think it's a danger to the people who live here. No one in May and October is going to suffer hypothermia. So I think we don't have to worry about them being that cold, especially in this building. That's all I want to say. Thank you for hearing us. I hope that you'll reconsider and allow management to make the decision once a variance is granted, that they be able to put the air conditioning on anytime after May 15th through October 15th. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosalie. That was really awesome. I appreciate you giving me all that background, giving us all that background. I just wanted to confirm with you, because I know you had mentioned June 1st, and currently, like you just said, the ordinance is written from May 15th to October 15th. So are you,
No, the ordinance is from June 1st to October 1st. That's what the city does.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. And then, and we're, okay, gotcha. And you're saying May
15th through
okay.
the October 15th. Gotcha. Would it be a more reasonable during times when the heat makes these units very unlivable, and you just can't escape it no matter what you do. There are no trees. We are lucky we live on the ocean and we have that full sun both in the front and the back. The St. George has its east facing front, rear facing east.
Mhm.
The sun is in these units, and when the sun is out, even if it's 70 degrees outside, it's 80 or 90 degrees in the units. So
Okay.
thank you.
Gotcha. I'm glad I clarified. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Carlos Estrada, and I also live here at the St. George. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, I also live here and live here in the St. George. I have been here for about 20 years, and every year is the same thing. It is so hot that even my two cats, my poor cats, go into the kitchen and lie down on the tile because it is that hot. It is ridiculously hot, and we are begging you to please let us turn on the AC at a reasonable date. June is, I mean, I understand, that there are some people who may need to have heat, but they can get heaters. Hey, they can get blankets too. I mean, it's just wholly unreasonable to have this, to have us keep the heat on after, after May, quite frankly. Now, what happens here is that the units, even though I turn it off, there's still heat emanating from them because the heat is on for the building. So you can still feel it coming on. And if you turn on the AC, the fan, all I'm doing is circulating hot air. So please consider this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Estrada.
I would like to clarify a few things in support of this as well. My name is Stephen Ross, apartment P213N, as in Nancy. I was on the board for many years, so I was involved in rebuilding the entire system, both air conditioning and heating. It's relatively easy to supply heat if the air conditioning is turned on, but it gets cold and we can't use it. A simple room heater that costs $20, $30 can be plugged in and keep a room warm. It's not possible to install a normal air-to-air window air conditioner in the building. And I want to make that very clear. People have told me in officialdom in Revere in the past that, well, they could just get an air conditioner. It has to be an air conditioner that would exchange heat with the water system, and that's environmentally irresponsible, but also very expensive, very cumbersome. Only a bathroom or kitchen would even have the water supply to do that. Also, there's an oddity in a centrally air-conditioned building. We heat and air condition the building over a course of a year for about $1 per square foot per year. That's about 1/3 the cost of heating and air conditioning in a normal triple decker in this part of Massachusetts. We do this because our air conditioning system and our heating system are astonishingly efficient, absolutely state of the art, the best we can get. So the interesting thing about that is our heating cost is actually our lowest utility cost now. We pay most for water. We pay second most for the electricity for common areas, which includes the air conditioning. So the variance we're asking for would actually increase our expenses slightly. We're not doing this for greed or anything else. We're doing this for comfort. This is long overdue. The original regulation was because landlords never provided air conditioning, but landlords have to provide heat. We need to provide both, and of course we are a condominium. But some council members over the years have told me, they said, "What does it make? Just install an air conditioner." You can't. It's just, the window design is a sealed window. They're not possible to do that.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cathy Minoxilis. I am also a resident at the St. George. I've been there now for going on 10 years actually. And I've been for many years a visiting home health physical therapist. And I've been inside of people's homes, particularly the elderly homebound. And I can tell you from my decades of experience, when it gets really hot, people who are elderly really, really do suffer. Their breathing becomes more difficult. It is just a very, very unhealthy situation. Also, my very first year, I moved in October, and I was shocked. I live right down the hall, actually, from Rosalie, and I never had to turn my heat on, which was crazy for me. I even had to open my sliding door facing the water to let cool air in. It got so warm even during the winter. And I've had a number of winters like that where I've never had to turn my heat on. So I'm assuming that most of the other units are in the same position that I was in. So I would just like you to consider what we're advocating for to make everybody a lot more comfortable and safer being able. We have a lot of older residents in our building too, and it's just not safe for them. Those of us who can get in and out, in our homes all day, it's a little different. So thank you for your time, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that wishes to speak?
Hi, my name is Alexis. I also live at the St. George condominium. I want to thank those who have already spoken that also live in the building. I think that they've really hit the nail on the head. I'm just going to probably reiterate the things that they've already said. These units do get so unbearably hot. And I mean, you can put on layers when you're cold, but you can only take off so many layers when you're hot. And it gets so warm in here, you just want to take your skin off. It is so unbearable. So I do just reiterate and implore the board to really consider letting us turn our AC on, please.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak? Any opponents? Anyone opposed? No opponents. Okay, so with no opponents and 5 speakers, all proponents of this, we can put it before the board to ask them for the St. George building only to modify the heating variance from May 15th to October 15th.
I'm in
Dr.
favor.
Conk?
I vote in favor. I think we should do it.
Neza?
Yes, I'm in favor also. We should do it.
Yeah, I think
Thank
something
you.
to consider too, Mike, is that with the kind of climate change occurring and the weather changing in the way it is, I'm not surprised seeing this and hearing this, caring for patients on the beach as well. We do get patients who are hospitalized because of heat stroke and other, unfortunate complications of the weather being the way it is nowadays. So I'm really glad we got a chance to discuss this and hear from everyone tonight. Thank you.
So that has been approved. I will be in contact with Jim, who's the property manager, and I will speak with him in regards to this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just for clarity, this is for the St. George building only. All other buildings will remain at May 31st to October 1st if they're granted a variance, unless they come before the board and ask for an extension.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There's no further business. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.